How's it going, people? In this spoilercast, I'm going to be exploring Metaphor re Fantazio, looking at the story as a whole and the characters we meet. If you like this kind of content, please like and subscribe as it really helps the channel. Now, I'm really excited about this one because this game really doesn't hold back with its messaging and themes. It's made by most of the Persona team, but I really enjoyed the older characters and the fantasy setting because as much as I do love Persona, it's difficult to roleplay and connect with some of the characters when they are all effectively children in high school. This game actually opens with a cutscene before you even hit the title screen, and it gives you a clip of Luis killing the king. I love this as straight off the bat it gives you an overview of Luis as the main antagonist and the sort of man he is. He is seemingly a highborn person of the Clamar tribe and a powerful mage to boot. Then, as you tab through the menu and opening cutscenes, you come to understand that you play as a protagonist, whose name you can choose, but for ease I'll refer to him as the Captain, as that's what your team members call you. The Captain and the Fairy Gallica are a travelling duo, on their way to the capital on a secret mission. Some things go awry and you get a glimpse of Hulkenberg, who you'll see later, but you start to get rumblings in this scene of a race divide. I remember thinking to myself at this point that this was really interesting, and I was wondering how far they were going to go with it. Turns out, pretty far. Once you go through the capital missions, you sign up to the guard and your mission with Gallica becomes apparent. You are on a mission to save the prince, who is still alive but bound by a curse that can't be lifted. Everyone believes the prince to be dead, so your mission is very sensitive. Okay, so we're on a narrative here which is well trodden and not too different from games we've seen in the past. So at this point I'm eager to see how these particular developers tell this familiar story. Spoilers, I thought they told it very well. During these opening segments, you really get a look into how race and discrimination is a firm narrative point in this game. There are 9 races which are referred to as tribes. The Clamar, who are treated best and are in leading roles, specifically the royal family. The Resant, who are also treated well, usually in prominent security positions like the Royal Guard or the Sanctus monks of the church. The Rogue and Ishkir tribes are 2 that are also fairly respected and in respectable roles. The next 5 tribes are the races that are discriminated against, and some really strongly so. The Parapus, the Nydia, the Ujif, the Mustari, and then finally the Elder. The Captain is an Elder, which is a tribe I would say is discriminated against the most, and boy do they show it. You encounter people who refuse to even communicate with you, or spit at you, or are just disgusted by your presence in the city. Early on you also see a lot of Parapus roaming the streets on the poverty line, and it's very clear at the racial divide here. Half-bloods are also considered vermin, and the introduction of Maria, who is the sweetest character ever in recent memory, really drives home this injustice. I really liked how this game didn't hold back with this theme, as although it is in a fantasy setting, it really drives home the disgrace of our real world without being too intrusive. It asks the player to be introspective, but also doesn't force them to, which is good. The Captain carries around a fantasy book in which depicts a fantasy world which seems suspiciously like ours, metaphors incoming, that they call a utopia. This book allows you to travel to this game's version of the Velvet Room, Academia, where you meet Moore, a strange character who is recovering their memory. He helps you navigate the waters of the archetypes, your personas in this game and main way of fighting, and is where you study the lineages and later on make masks and summons for those specific archetypes, if you choose to use them. Academia is beautiful. I really like the art style and the lighting in this location. I'll talk more later. That's a very confusing sentence to say. Fast forward a bit and you've made some acquaintances, one of them being Stroll and the other being your mission contact Grius. You also have taken down one of the big monsters in the game. Humans! How cool is it that they're called humans? And they are these distorted mutant beings that have some features of a human like a face or an eye or a different appendage, but twisted into monster form. What a nice touch, because let's be honest, us humans can be real monsters sometimes. Once you get back to the city, the main plot point is at the king's funeral you are attempting to assassinate Luis, as you believe he was the creator of the curse that binds the prince given that he is a king killer. As the funeral begins, Luis comes out and starts his monologue on how he murdered the king and why he should be the new ruler. He states he will rule with power, in a world where strength overcomes discrimination. A take on equality that is different and divisive for sure, but an equality nonetheless. He has a lot of support, specifically from the lower tribes, as they are tired of being discriminated against. They feel like because they have to overcome the hardships the higher tribes don't come face to face with, they will be stronger. Now comes the first twist and basically the proper start of the game. The royal palace rises into the sky and the rock face below turns into the shape of the king's face. He bellows that the next ruler of the kingdom will be someone that the people decide upon. Shock! Horror! A democracy? Don't be so ridiculous, you can hear the higher tribes cry. This is the point where I was like, hell yeah. I am locked in. This is a world where discrimination rules and those at the top decide on everything for the people. This message from the king is throwing a spanner in the works and talks of molding a new world where the people can decide. An equality different from Luis's. Grius attempts the assassination at this point but dies by the king's magic as we discover that the king's magic protects those who are popular as to safeguard them from death during this election process. This destroys the plan that we had as killing Luis is no longer an option. There is a coronation rock that appears and shows the most popular candidates at any given time. There's a short gameplay stint here running through the cathedral as one of Luis's necromancers tries to steal a royal relic and the captain stops him with the help of Stroll and now Hulkenberg. Zorba, the necromancer here, is defeated by us and in his swan song he resurrects a human in the middle of the capital before disappearing. Zorba is an important character and I'll talk about him a bit more later. We defeat the human and now our new mission is presented to us. The church who believe they should rule, and are in a prominent position to do so, conjure up a plan that they will make this election a contest that they will rig in their favour. This would give the people an illusion that they had a chance, when in the end the Sanctus Church would hold the crown. This would also eliminate the threat of Luis. I really enjoyed this early impression of the sickness that infects the church and how dangerous religion can be, especially when used as a tool for power. So, our mission becomes as such. We will tour the land competing in this contest in hopes to come close enough to Luis that we can steal the formula for the curse, as killing him is now impossible for reasons I mentioned before. You meet Nuris, the engineer, and he is a wacky and massively entertaining character to join your party. He drives the Gauntlet Runner, which will transport you to the cities on your journey. I loved these Gauntlet Runner designs. When they say runner, they literally mean runner. These vehicles are effectively ships with a whole living quarter inside and two massive legs on the outside that physically runs you across the land. They're super sick. At this point, let me take a moment to look at the current characters. Your party now consists of Stroll, a Clamar, who is a lord and his town was burned to the ground. You find out later on that it was Luis who allowed this to happen and that fuels a new hate. Stroll's friendship quests see him trying to relocate the survivors of his burned town and give them a new life. In the end, he does this by finding his lost inheritance from his parents and using it in full to do so. It's very moving. Hulkenberg, a Roussant who used to be a knight of the Royal Guard and was present when the prince was cursed. She hates herself for not being able to stop it that day and feels disgraced because of it. Her friendship quest sees her come into contact with one of her old colleagues from the Royal Guard and how he has gone mad with power and killing people in the streets for petty views. These quests show her overcome her feelings of disgrace and finding a new purpose and respect in herself. She also has this side characteristic where she just loves food and eats anything, which is really funny at times. And let's be honest, I can relate. I love food. Nuris, an Ishkia who was an engineer for the royal family and made this gauntlet runner for the prince before he passed. He is a lover of science and is an absolute nutjob to boot. He is an older character, which is nice to have a mix-up, and he is also really charming. His friendship quests see you collecting lost relics for him to assist him in making a scientific breakthrough. In the end, these relics turn into be something that could be turned into a powerful weapon, but Nuris wants to dispose of them where nobody can find them to avoid this outcome. Very respectable indeed. There are some side characters you would have come across too. Maria, who is a half-breed and is the daughter of Grius. She lives in the inn in the bad end of town and she is also treated horribly by the public, and also heartbroken over the death of her dad. She is such a sweet character and the writing is done so well you feel really protective over her. Her friendship quest sees her overcome her hardships of discrimination to give back to the people even if they treated her badly. It is a good Samaritan kind of quest, but it is very well written. You would have also come across Begita, a rogue who sells magic igniters. She is a mysterious character who has a softer side open up as you spend time with her. Her friendship quest sees her overcome the threat posed to her by the Sanctus Church, and at the same time save some Ujif children that were targeted for death by the Sanctists. Birgitta was a cool character design, but I didn't feel too invested in her and her story. Lastly, the final character you would have met would be Katarina. She's the coolest cat in the game for sure. Katarina is a Parapus, the tribe that look like cats. Her character design is just dripping with uniqueness. She also has a good friendship quest which sees her struggling through fighting for what is right and wrong. She starts off fighting in the election for those who are worst off, and she believes the best way to do so is to pillage and hurt the rich and powerful. Over the course of the captain's time with her, she comes to understand that this route would make her no better than those that currently oppress her, and so she has a kind of epiphany. It's a story of struggle and self-worth, and told really well. Back to the main story now. We are heading on towards our first destination, Martira Town. This particular arc has both the best human design and also the best quest objective. The quest is to capture Heisme, the criminal, and this leads to an encounter with a human sandworm, which ends with it eating the captain and team for lunch. How are we going to get out? Well, what comes in must come out eventually, if you catch my drift. Then the objective pops up. Get to the anus. Let's be honest, this game deserves GOTY just for that alone, but they definitely follow through on it. No pun intended. As you make your way to the anus, the worm actually poops you out. Sound effects in play and butthole in view. Unique and hilarious. I loved this mission. Once all the fun and games is over, you gain your focus again and Heisme is the target. Turns out you've been lied to, as a devious criminal Heisme is actually a sweet old Ujif grieving the loss of his son. Heisme is a breath of fresh air, a complicated older man with a sad past. He also has a fantastic VA. The Ujif are a tribe that look like bats, and they are heavily discriminated against. You learn that these crimes of abducting children that have been placed upon him are false, and simply because he is a Ujif. You also learn that his son died as he got caught in a scuffle and took a few hits, and because he was a Ujif, he just lay there dying in the street, and nobody came to help him. Heisme's friendship quests take you on a journey to spread his son's ashes and finding the right place to do so. It is very heartfelt and a great representation of the emotional stages of grief. The writing is top-notch. So, Heisme is innocent. Who is guilty? As you make your way through this town's main dungeon, you discover that Joanna, the town's leader and a sanctus of the church no less, is to blame. Her story is a miserable one. You discover that she had a child born of half-blood with another tribe, and due to the racial prejudices of the church, it was killed shortly after birth. Stricken with grief, Joanna eventually comes across this human that resembles a baby, and constructs a hallucination in her head that this is actually her child. To keep this human alive and happy, she feeds it innocent children of the village in secret. Firstly, the design of this human baby thing is absolutely horrifying. I was both disgusted and amazed when I first saw it. The opening cutscene, you literally watch it bite the head off one of the guards. It's absolutely wild. Secondly, I'm not sure how others felt, but the fact that the game kinda made me feel sorry for Joanna, even though she's literally kidnapping and killing innocent children, just shows how heavy-hitting the writing can be sometimes. You defeat the human, and Joanna says she will come with you as tribute for your trial and confess her crimes in public to the church. Other characters you may have run into on this arc were Barden and Alonso. Barden is the captain of the guard at Martira, and he was also in the dark about Joanna's actions. In wake of this, his friendship quests take you on a journey of him becoming leader of the town, but fighting against what's right and how to correctly implement it. Understanding that he has to also listen to the people and not just brute force decisions that he thinks are for the greater good. One of the weaker bonds in my opinion, as I wasn't too interested, but he does provide a good archetype lineage and so it is worth investing time into nonetheless. Alonso is your classic shady character, lurking in the shadows and is effectively a con man, fitting for an idiot who are known for their tricks. His friendship quests see a con go wrong, sick rhyme, that ends up with his own mother dying and his village destroyed, and then faking his own death as recompense. It's a wild story with a lot of twists and turns and definitely one of the more enjoyable ones. The trickster archetype lineage is essential as well, I found, especially with optional bosses, those sweet, sweet turn icons. So I always found a need to invest in his quests, but the story was good enough to keep going back in any case. Off we now trot into the next city of our adventure, Briarhaven, the beautiful seaside city. Brylehaven is gorgeous. I love just skating around and taking in the sights. The main quest here is seeing if our stunt with Joanna is going to get us close enough to Luis. And it works! Joanna confesses her crimes in front of everyone, and Santafex Forden makes his decision. Off with her head! Luis is impressed by us, and he takes us aboard his ship to swear fealty to him. This is where we get proper introductions to my favourite characters, Juna, Basilio, and Fidelio. Basilio and Del are the Scouse Parapus brothers who I think have the best VAs in the game. They are often referred to as the Magnus brothers. Juna is the beloved Nydia songstress that is very popular amongst the public. I'll talk more about those three a little bit later on. Now that we have sworn fealty to Luis, we have access to his Skyrunner ship, and so the captain and the team hatch a plan to sneak in and steal the formula at the most opportune moment. Gallica breaks in to try and secure a safe route, and whilst doing so she finds Juna sneaking about. Naughty naughty Juna, what's going on here then? Gallica finds you need to get different keycards to access different areas, and that forms the dungeon for this part of the game. I loved this dungeon as I thought the slight switch up in playstyle for the stealth bits was nice and refreshing 40-ish hours in. I also thought the different boss fights on every floor were great. With the keys now secured, you have the route. You decide the best time to go is at the party Luis is throwing, as there will be minimal people on the ship during that event. The evening of the party comes and it's go time. The captain and Gallica sneak on alone and the door is locked. The key has changed, and then all of a sudden the Skyrunner takes flight. This section is so cool. You jump on your blade and you skate along the outside of the Tradrius with the glow of a massive moon in the background. It's really stunning. You manage to break into Luis's room, and who'd you bump into but Juna? This is where you find out that Juna is also a secret agent working for your cause, and she has already successfully managed to get close to Luis. A fantastic twist in the tale. You get discovered by one of Luis's followers, whose name I can't remember because I thought this guy was insufferable. You fight him with Juna and she unlocks her archetype, the Masked Dancer, which I loved. The design, the power switching with the masks. Juna became a mainstay in my party because of this. At the end of your fight, this guy actually tries to assassinate the captain in bad faith, and he gets killed by the king's magic because of it. You then have to make up a story with Juna to convince Luis about what happened. Luis seems convinced, but the Magnus brothers are not. At this point, Santafex Forden and the church devise their next plan to rig the contest and come across the idea that they would ask the contestants to get a divine relic and present it to the church at the next meeting. This is huge, because the divine relics are relics of power that are worshipped by the other religion that exists in the world, the religion that are followed by the pagan Mystari tribe. This flagrant expression by the Sanctus Church to steal these relics from the Mystari just goes to show how oppressive they are. They show disgust for this other religion, and the Mystari are even banished to their own isle separate from the mainland. Even after all of this, Santafex Forden is still in the lead of this election, and this game presents a theme of how dangerous blind faith can be. This is a very important message, and one that it expresses well. Luis entrusts us to get him the relic of the Dragon Lance, which is on the Mystari Island itself. This now becomes our next destination. Due to the Magnus brothers' lack of trust, they decide to come along with us. Juna has obviously joined the party as well, as she's one of us. Looking now at the characters of this arc. First is Juna. As I mentioned earlier, she is the famed songstress, and we discover that she is also a secret agent for the prince's cause. She is Nydia, and her friendship quest sees her overcoming her fame to give promise to an up-and-coming struggling singer. During her quest, you also discover the true form of the Nydia, which is like a little doll. The whole Nydia tribe are actually these cute little plushy doll-like things, and it's so quirky and I loved it. It really gave that tribe more depth to their trickster nature. Next is the Magnus brothers. They are Parapus and are effectively Luis's right-hand men. They are the traditional one smart, one strong trope, with Del sporting the brains and Basilio sporting the brawn. Del is very suspicious of your team and Basilio is open to accepting you. They are just looking for a better world, and due to their past of discrimination being Parapus, they see Luis's idea of equality as something they want to follow and support. Let's see what happens to them later. Another important character that comes to prominence in this arc is Rella. She is called the Saint by the public, and she is an Ishkia healer, the best healer in the land. She is also Juna's adoptive sister. She is being used as a puppet by the church to further their popularity given how popular she is with the public. She shows a distaste for the church and shows in cutscenes that she is struggling with what the church is effectively forcing her to do. She is important, very important, but we don't know this yet. Due to her magical power, her kind heart, and her love for Juna, the captain and team decide to entrust her with the recipe for the curse that they stole from Luis, hopeful that she'll be able to make sense of it and tell them how to disband the curse. She informs us that it is not a full spell, almost as if it is drawn from memory and not definitive. Once again, important for later. She concludes that killing the caster is the only way to dispel the curse. This sets us back to square one. Onwards we go to the Mystari island at Ria. It isn't named this until later, but as this is a spoilercast, I will refer to it like this the whole time. Along the way we encounter a human of the sea, a big, gruesome, octopus-like creature. This is the same creature that Santefex Forden lectures the public about slaying in the last city. What a lying bastard. You defeat this human with the help of the Magnus brothers, but Del gets injured. Importantly, the captain saves Del from certain death, and so this gains trust from the brothers, especially Basilio. The team arrives in Etria and is almost immediately captured by the locals and locked up in the prison. The Magnus brothers are not caught, and so they master the escape plan. After breaking free, there is a bit of dialogue that shows the island is having troubles, and they believe the way to stop the troubles is to sacrifice the princess in the ritual for the dragon god. This is where we are introduced to Yufa, the princess. Some explosion of magma happens at the dragon temple that traps Yufa inside, and her brother the prince returns injured and pleads with us to rescue his sister in exchange for the dragon lance, which lies at the bottom of the temple. Perfect! A mission that benefits us both. At this point, Fidelio and Basilio stay behind as Del needs treatment for his wound that he got against a human, and so it's back to normal for us. Just as an aside here, I absolutely loved that all the Mystari were voiced by Welsh VAs. I love to see the full UK representation. The Dragon Temple, in my opinion, was such an annoying dungeon. Progress blocked by darkness, and you have to solve the puzzle in order to progress, but the puzzle is just a trial and error situation. Thankfully, I was a bit overleveled here, so I could defeat most enemies without going into turn-based, or it would have been an absolute drag. We find Yufa and get to the depths of the temple, and there, under the rocks, is the remnants of the previous civilization, which looks mysteriously like the world we know today. Another hint towards what this fantasy book may be about. You can also pick up items in this part which nods towards modern day items. At the bottom you face the boss. It turns out the dragon god is in fact a real dragon, and it's corrupted by a human, obviously. This boss design was badass. Enjoyable and challenging fight, but this is not the end. Once defeating, Yufa absorbs the dragon back into the lance to return the relic to full power, but the human itself has slumped off and is terrorizing the town. Back we run to challenge and defeat the human in Etria Center, and this fight was very interesting. It was one of those where the boss keeps changing up his weaknesses and resistances and really adds spice. I like this fight a lot. Turns out Stoneheart Del had actually aided in escorting the civilians to safety at this time, showing his softer, sweeter side. He actually now has a concern with his injury, and so the team call Rella in just to make sure he's fully healed. She does so, and she has a special moment with Juna where she seems to allude that Luis may not be the culprit for the curse. Let's return to that later. The Etria segment is now completed, and Yufa joins the party along with the Divine Relic, so that's a two birds one stone situation. I would like to mention that the design of Etria Island and the music played here are both phenomenal. The general soundtrack has a tribe-like twist, and I thought it was great. Yufa is a princess of the Mystari tribe, and let's just say she has a certain liking towards the captain. Although there is no romancing in this game, along her friendship quest she does confess her love for the guy, which is kinda sweet. Outside of this, her friendship quest sees her wanting to explore the religion of Sanctism due to her curiosity having never left Etria. In the end, you end up helping some poor sick people who are being led to their death by a particular Sanctist and his faith. Another nod from the game towards the dangers of religion and blind faith. There's some deep-cut dialogue in this arc, but ultimately it is a very enjoyable quest with a great ending boss fight. The Mystari have 3 eyes, and the third eye is used to see Magla presence around, so having Yufa now on the team opens some interesting insights going forward. Onwards we run to the holy capital Alterberry Heights. Along this journey is where we discover that the Dragon Lance can be used to kill a contestant as it isn't subdued by the king's magic. This is because Stroll attacks the captain and the strike hits. The mission now changes again. Kill Luis. The plan is born. Juna is doing a performance at the cathedral. She will open the back door and the performance will be her distraction. The captain and Yufa break onto the roof and climbing down onto a chandelier orchestrate throwing the lance to finally kill Luis. Everything goes according to plan and the lance is thrown and hits Luis. Bullseye! I remember I physically punched the air at this point. It was such a huge moment and the cutscene was so beautiful. But there's a hitch. Yufa can't get the lance to return to her. Oh no, something is off here. But there's no time. We have to escape quickly and so we return to the roof. Ominously and completely owning this entrance, here comes Luis. He confronts us on the roof, slightly injured, lance in hand. This is the battle we've been waiting for. No running, no hiding. It's go time. This battle surprisingly was a lot easier than I expected, but I put it down to Luis being injured. He's defeated and the glass underneath us cracks and he falls down right onto the stage with the lance in hand. Dead as a doorknob, Luis has been slain. Santefex Forden gets one of his guys to confirm the death and then suddenly Forden is unrivaled. He takes the lance as he suggests it belongs to the church, but we all know he wants it because the power it holds to subdue the king's magic. The evil of the church has now reached max volume and seems to be unbeatable at this point. Or so we thought. Looking in the far sight mirror, Gallica can see that the curse has not been lifted. The team panics and conclude that Luis was not the caster, but maybe it had been Forden the whole time. The mission and attention then turn to dethroning Forden. But only briefly, as here comes the massive twist. As we go to confront Forden, someone else confronts him at the same time. A hooded figure emerges and pulls down their hood. It's Luis! But you were confirmed dead, Forden screams. But who confirmed the death? This is revealed to be Zorba. Remember him? Correct. He was Luis's necromancer from the start of the game. Connect the dots. Luis then kills Forden with no hesitation, and I would like to say as an aside here that my jaw has been on the floor for about 5 straight minutes. Luis then reiterates his world of equality through power and strength, and anyone not with him will die. He then targets a small family who seem to oppose him, and Basilio stands in the way of the attack. At the very last moment, in dives Fidelio to save his brother and takes the fatal hit in his place. While we had spent a lot of time with Del at this point, I do think the game didn't do a good job at making us like him. He did spend most of his time being an arse, and so I think slightly better writing here could have made this more of an emotional hit. Although, the cries from Basilio did cut deep and he vows to kill Lord Luis, and so we have a new party member. Luis sees us as the only competitor now and so challenges us to meet him back in Grand Triad for the final showdown. Basilio is now a full member of the team and now with the Parapus it gives us a full sweep of the tribes. Except Rogue if you don't count Grius' short stint. Better rush those friendship ranks though, as you're probably 65-ish hours into the game at this point. Basilio has one of the best character designs in the game and his VA is also excellent. His friendship quest leads you to encounter a friend from his childhood. It turns out that Basilio and the other Parapus from the slums were test subjects for the church's use of magic igniters in their youth. This friend of his that you encounter has turned into a murderer as these experiments messed him up so much. It's a great quest which shows Basilio fighting between the loss of Del and the prospect of also losing a friend. It's very powerful and one of my favourite arcs in the game. So, let's recap. The church is destroyed and the corruption is cut out with the death of Forden. We killed Luis, but he's back to life due to his necromancer, but the important thing is his death didn't quell the curse, meaning that he wasn't the caster. But it also wasn't Forden clearly. So who is it? If you hadn't had enough twists and turns yet, the true caster of the curse is now revealed. It's Rella, the saint, Juna's sister. Rella has now also been put forward by the church as the contender to replace Forden, and so the 3 frontrunners are now Luis, Rella, and the captain. This is a complete shock moment and not one I ever saw coming. I never ever suspected Rella, but it all makes sense. Look back to where you took her the formula and she said it looked like Luis had drawn it from memory. That's because it was. He never wrote the curse in the first place. It was all Rella. Her close proximity to the church, her alluding to Juna in Et Ria that it may not have been Luis, every subtle little thing starts to connect. She commands us to meet her at the Mage Academy and seems to have shown her true evil self. She is saying some absolutely horrible things, and then she attacks us with the backup of a dragon. A bloody dragon! And the best healer in the land. A combo for destruction, and trust me, this fight is a real difficulty spike. I heavily relied on Juna and those sweet turn icons to get by. Once you manage to defeat her, she reveals the truth. It was Forden who demanded the attack upon the prince. As it turns out, the prince is a half-blood with an elder mother. We all know how racist the church is at this point, so Forden sees this as an absolute disgrace and not one that can be revealed to the public. Rella is only 12 years old at the time, and Forden strong-arms her into doing it using threats against her family, and particularly Juna. It turns out that because she was so young, she lost control of the curse, and so it contorts into how it is, and in fact, it's killing her to this day. She confesses her true love for Juna and how it was all for her. This was such a heartfelt moment and made me super emotional. Before Rella dies, she sends her message out to the people through some kind of magical telepathy that they should put their support in the captain in the contest against Luis. A nice touch. The super heart-wrenching passing of Rella finally gives us a mission success. A quick look in the Farsight mirror shows that the curse has been lifted on the prince. However, one thing still remains. Luis is still the most popular candidate, and so he must be defeated or releasing the prince of the curse would have been in vain. It is too risky at this point to go and see the prince, as we know Luis is watching our movements. Onwards we go back to Grand Triad, and Luis throws down the gauntlet for a duel, and we accept. Somewhere along this narrative, Luis convinces the king to release his king's magic so the contestants can duel to the death, but I can't quite remember when. Not that it matters for us anyway, because as far as I know, Luis challenges us to a duel, which in my understanding is outside of the king's magic anyway. So, we turn up to the duel, in front of everyone, in the middle of Grand Triad. Contestant 1 Luis, against contestant 2 the captain. Finally, the true battle. The fight the whole game has been building up to. Or so we think. Luis casts some crazy magic on us, exposing our strong Magla presence, and the captain starts to turn into a giant human. Fear and disgust spread among the public, and Luis twists the story that all Elder are like this in their true form. This particular narrative confused me slightly, as it's obviously Luis bending magic to extort the public's hate for the Elder, but Luis isn't a racist, or at least he hadn't been perceived by me as one up to this point. Perhaps he's just like all the other Clamar. This stunt immediately makes the captain's support drop off a cliff, and his face disappears from the coronation rock. I think our popularity rank drops down to 1,000 or something crazy. The team have to immediately leave the capital, as it's obvious the hate is growing, and so the decision is made that now is the time to go and visit the prince in the secret village. During this time, Luis enters the flying royal palace in the aim to get the royal scepter and unleash his vision of the world, effectively turning the weak into humans and only the strong can survive. As the team arrive at the secret village, the Elden Sanctum, we discover that it has already been ambushed by Zorba, and he has assassinated the prince. We just can't catch a break. But if you hadn't had enough twists and turns yet, strap in, because here comes another one. As you stand over the dead body of the prince, the wise Elden Elder approaches, the one that gave you and Gallica your mission. Wrong. The following cutscene and dialogue explain that the captain never existed before this mission. He wasn't present when the plan was made, and Gallica was alone in her quest. The fantasy novel that you carry around was actually the prince's, and you are the embodiment of Magla mixed with his own soul that was born from this book. The prince's own feeling of an adventurer that would fight for equality in the world. In essence, you are a part of the prince himself. His soul then rises from the dead body and merges with your own. Now, other than a sweet hair color change, what this means is that the captain is now the prince, the one and only. Surprise! You've been the prince all along. This also unlocks the prince archetype and general royal archetypes for the rest of the team, and these designs were awesome. The Elden woman then goes on to explain that the past world was actually the world told in the fantasy novel, and the humans that existed then were actual people who destroyed themselves through war upon the discovery of the power of Magla. Now it makes sense why this novel sounded so much like our real world, right? Metaphor is in the title, I suppose. Now all that remains of those humans are what we see today, distorted by Magla in their monstrous forms. The Elder Tribe are long descendants of the humans of the before world and hold the most similarities with them. What a beautiful narrative moment this was. Everything come together in a neat package and really makes you reflect on what is fantasy and what is real. Is equality really manageable without fear and war? Is power really the only language we understand? During this time, Luis confronts the ghost of the king and throws down his horns. He's actually an elder. At this point, I was giving a standing ovation. Not only is it another beautifully executed twist, but it is also a fantastic representation of the stupidity of our real-world prejudices. No matter your color or creed, you can achieve things only perceived to be obtainable by the non-prejudiced. Luis gets the royal scepter and progresses towards his vision of a world ruled by power. He casts his spell across the world as he sits on the throne. The team now has approximately 1 month to gain new support and make it to the floating palace to confront Luis. From a gameplay perspective, this is great as it allowed me to max bond all my relationships so I could see all their stories. There's also some cool dragon side quests to pursue here. Once the final day arrives, up we go to the floating palace and we progress the dungeon to get to Luis. Just before the throne room, we encounter Zorba for the final time. He's been slightly twisted into human form with the help of Luis's magic. It's sad here to see Zorba's absolute undying devotion to Luis and his cause. Zorba is a half-breed between a Mistari and a Clamar. It's clear he has been treated badly in his life due to discrimination and has become absorbed by Luis's propaganda of equality through power. He is a well-written character, but ultimately in our way, so bye-bye Zorba. We approach Luis, but he flees into what I would describe as a bubble of dystopian reality in the sky. This is the final adventure, going into the rift and finally beating Luis. The area is overrun with all kinds of nasty monsters and humans, giving us just a glimpse of what Luis's world would look like if we allowed him to succeed. The first fight with Luis sees him undressed and bare almost all of his manly features. He is raised up, floating in the air and radiant with the sun behind him, almost godlike. Gods don't stand in our way though, and we defeat him only for his lordship to escape on the Charadrius, which, by the way, we learned in the Elden Sanctum might be Luis's real name. There is an epic cutscene here which almost brought me to tears of the whole team fighting together to make sure that the prince can escape in the runner with Nurus to chase after Luis. You have Hulkenberg, Juna, and Yufa standing ground fighting off the hordes. Then you have Stroll, Heisme, and Basilio launching each other through the air to attack the aerial threat. It's fucking sick, for lack of a better term. Once this plays out, the prince reaches Luis and he tries the old trick of the magic which previously turned him into a human. In fighting this magical onslaught, the prince rips out his heart, so rad, and passes out. We awaken in Mor's territory. He tries to convince us to take his hand and accept that the world portrayed in the book, i.e. our current modern world, is the real world and we should stop fighting for this fantasy. This leads to a cool segment where the walls of academia fall down and reveal the car-lined streets of some modern-day city. Equality has already been achieved. Interestingly, if you take his hand here like I did the first time, it actually ends the game and I had to load up a save which is annoyingly before the first Luis fight in order to continue. Either way, it was a nice touch. Turning Mor away leads you to fight him, and upon defeat we learn his true identity. Like you were born from the soul of the prince's fantasy, he was born from the king's fantasy, and is in turn a fragment of the king himself, meaning that good old Mor is actually daddy. He also reveals that he is the author of the fantasy book in which we now carry, which, surprise surprise, isn't actually a fantasy as we learned in the Sanctum. No time for family reunions though, so he gives us his best and the soul of the king can finally be laid to rest. Snap back to reality, the team are around us and lift the prince to his feet. Luis, time for you to go down. This final battle is the spectacle we wanted. Luis contorts himself into part human as he's got giant hands, many faces, tentacles, all the monstrous things. And finally, in the most epic of fights, he is defeated. The ending cutscenes in this game were so heartwarming and nourishing for the soul. I'm super happy with the direction the dev team decided to go with this. It shows the prince being crowned in addition to all the party members fulfilling their roles in the new kingdom. It fast forwards a year, I think, and it truly is nice to see everyone doing so well, as, let's be honest, by the end we are so connected with this cast of characters due to the excellent writing. I can't remember exactly all the specific roles, but Hulkenberg, Stroll, Heisme, and Basilio are all some kind of leaders of guards or captains or something of the sort. Juna is head of the newly reopened Mage Academy, which is a nice nod to the late Rella. Nuris is chief engineer, and Yufa, I actually don't know what she does, but she's there looking cool. The prince, now king, at the end decides that he wants to go on another journey and travel the country showing face for all the civilians, as that is the kind of ruler he wants to be. It sees the whole party drop everything they're doing and go with him, and they even bring Sweet Maria along, which is just the best touch. When the credits of this game rolled, I couldn't help but feel like I had just experienced an absolute masterpiece. The story itself is fantastic, as I've just retold, with all of its twists and turns, but also the individual character stories I thought were a lot more interesting than Persona's. Messaging of the dangers of blind faith and corruption of religion were told strongly and effectively. The horrors of discrimination and prejudices against people told coldly, but in a way that really makes you reflect on the injustices of our world. The irony and metaphor of the fantasy of equality they strive for being actually what our world is today was brilliant. I love this game if you can't tell by now, and I would love to hear what you think too. Please comment below with your thoughts and don't forget to like and subscribe. If you are interested, you can also check out my review for Metaphor on my channel page. For more casual gamer content, keep it here, and I'll hopefully see you soon. Peace and love.